Hi gang, Rob here. It is the evening of 15 July 2017 and I've got 3 kids and I sort of remember what this feels like, but I am, like for the 4th time, a proud papa this evening. Why? Well, this box should give you a hint. It's from Bark River Knives, Escanaba, Michigan, USA, and what comes in the box is the reason for the way I'm feeling this evening. It is the Gunny Sidekick by Bark River Knives in M4, CPM M4 to be exact. Those of you who follow the channel know that for some time, kicking around in my head has been a vision of a 4-inch class clip point high performance slicing machine of an all-purpose knife, fixed blade variety. And you know that it's gone through some iterations and incarnations, and we finally made it to the fruition of a production run of what is now the Bark River Gunny Sidekick. Should we look at the knife? I think we shall. Let's look at a couple of them. I have several, a dozen or so, that were drop shipped to me directly from KnivesShipFree, the exclusive retailer for the Gunny Sidekick in its first production run. Just want to show you a couple of them this evening. And here's the first one. Take a look. Take a look at this sexy, deadly, effective 4 1/8 inch clip point blade with, I think, a perfectly proportioned clip, a gorgeous swedge, still leaving a significant spine thickness if you would need to baton some kindling. The handle, pure gunny. This one in stunning American walnut with black liners. And here's the show side. I've already got fingerprints on it. Bark River Knives, CPM M4. Man, they just killed it. I mean, they just killed it in a good way. You know, I'm a little nervous. We're producing this knife from a hand-drawn blueprint, and lots of conversation between me and Mike Stewart and Derek Bone at KnivesShipFree. And because there's so much hand work that goes into these knives at Bark River, I was just a little concerned how the finished product would match the drawing and the vision for this knife. And I'm telling you what, I know Mike had to babysit this through the shop because they are perfect. I mean perfect. All the normal Bark River stuff is done well as usual. The hafting, the way the handles are finished. Check out this red pine cone. I've never shown a pine cone Bark River on the channel before. These are actual pine cones that are inlaid or impregnated with different colors of acrylic resin to stabilize them and fill out their shape. They come in all different colors and patterns depending on the nature of the original pine cone. But the normal Bark River stuff is perfect. The hafting is perfect. The finishing of the pins and the lanyard tube, perfect. When you look at the profile of the knife as you go around it, everything is perfect. Their grinders on the hafting side of the line just do a phenomenal job. But it's the other things that they got so right that impressed me. The symmetry of the plunges, the way the plunge terminates right at the apex of the oversized TheApostleP sharpening notch. There is absolutely no deviation in thickness from the heel of that blade through the belly to the tip. The grinds are perfect. The metal finishing is beautiful. And as I wrote to Mike this morning when I was thanking him for doing such a great job, look at the consistency in the satin on that M4. Unbelievable. Guys, if you don't know, the normal process for a Bark River knife in every steel except M4 is to water jet the blanks at New Jersey Waterjet, Larry's company, and the blanks are cut out. Then those blanks go to heat treat. And when they come back from heat treat, they go to bevel grinding. That's where the main grind of the knife is applied in a flat or saber fashion. And then they come back in-house to Bark River, where the handles are applied, the handles are finished, and then the convex grind is applied, all the finish, grinding, polishing, and the edge. Well, with M4, the heat treat and bevel grind steps are swapped, because you ain't going to bevel grind no CPM 4 at 62 to 63 Rockwell without giving yourself all kinds of fits. So those two processes are swapped, but one thing that has to be done after heat treat is the convex and the finishing. And oh man, did they nail it. And I'm telling you guys, M4 fights you every step of the way. But man, if you stick with it, it just yields such a beautiful product. Let's go over dimensions real quick. The blades are going to range between 4 1/16 and 4 1/8, depending on which hand did them and what they had to work with. Handles are 4 5/8 inches. Stock thickness is 150. A very, very high convex with very little flat. The height of that grind is about 1 3/16 inches. And then they terminate to a beautifully thin dimension behind the edge. I measured a couple of these, and we come in real tight. Just give you a shot of that little tiny, the edge grind that Bark River does, which is a real tight little convex. It's not a flat micro bevel as some people have suggested. But I tried to measure these with a pair of calipers just at the upper edge of that little convex edge, about 20-25 thousandths up the blade. And I was getting measurements in the 16 to 18 thousandths range in thickness. Yeah, you can't really even see it. There. They're like a freaking razor, guys. Oh. And I know Mike and I talked about this before we did them. Since we were going to use M4, which gives you unbelievable hardness, abrasion and wear resistance, aka edge holding, as well as toughness. Toughness that rivals steels that are generally run at a much lower Rockwell hardness. The edge stability of CPM M4 is outstanding. So even with a 4-inch Bowie knife that we're going to use hard when we need to, we knew that it could withstand this kind of edge geometry, and man does it, I'll tell you. Weight on these, moving right along, between 5.2 and 5.5 ounces, depending on the handle material. The Gunny handle, for those of you who don't know, is solid except for the pin and lanyard holes. There are no water jet lightening slots or holes in the Gunny handle. So what we end up with, which I really like in a knife this size, if you notice, if it's going to fall one way or the other, it's going to fall into the hand. So if your hand is on the knife with no grip at all, with the forefinger in the finger groove, the knife is going to rest in the hand. It's just slightly handle heavy, which makes it a dream to handle and super fast. If it's a chopper, you want it to be front heavy, so it's going to fall out of your hand like that, because you want that weight forward for momentum. But in a small, nimble knife like this, it's absolutely perfectly balanced. Before I get into some more specifics, let's look at the sheath that ships with it. It's just a beautiful sheath. It's going to be a bit of a low rider, so the top of the handle when the knife is fully inserted, is going to be just over the top of the sheath. It might drop down a little bit as the sheath breaks in. And then your belt's going to ride here. So it's not a knife that's going to be poking you in the side. It is going to ride a little bit lower, so if you're wearing an overshirt and you don't want your knife to protrude from the bottom, this might not be a sheath you love. But you know what? If you've got a springbok or a gunny or any other similarly sized bark river, you can certainly swap sheaths if you like. I really like the sheath, and I like the aesthetics of the sheath. I like the reinforcing panel at the top of the sheath. I like the way that it's tooled. There is a little bit of internal stitching, but it is recessed, so your tip's not going to catch it. It's just a really, really well-made sheath, guys. And handsome too, I think. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we? I've looked at a lot of comments on some of the pictures that have been posted about this knife, and it seems that this little feature right here has generated some conversation. For those of you who are into the zen of convex sharpening, you know exactly why that notch is there. For those of you who, are just into the way a knife looks, you look at that and think, man, that's kind of a big sharpening choil. Well, it is. I wanted to make sure, especially on subsequent sharpenings, that as we're sharpening metal away, we're not shrinking that sharpening notch to a point where it becomes a problem for the base of the edge. Now, I'll grant you, the fact that we used M4 means it's going to take a long time to wear away much metal. But I wanted to be sure that when we're doing an edge that's 17 thousandths thick, and it's beautifully consistent, and the guys on the grinders have taken great pains and great time to make it perfect, I want to be sure I can get perfect, sharp, consistent cutting edge all the way to the back without any goofy recurves or flares. And man, does it work. Let me show you my knife. And I spent a little bit of time this morning sort of finishing off my edge to 1/2 micron on my sandpaper fixture, the Edge Right from Mojave Man, and on my strops. Don't know if we're going to be able to pick up that polish, but unlike a V-ground bevel, it's kind of hard to get the reflection off this convex edge, but I think you're getting the point, aren't you? See how it's so consistent tip to hilt? Oh, I just love this knife. By the way, this is desert ironwood burl, and a rather blonde piece of desert ironwood burl, which I like because it does oxidize and darken over time, so this handle should retain a lot of its character for many years. So what can we use this knife for? Let me tell you what I used it for today. Just a little preliminary testing. Those of you who looked at my Instagram page might have seen a little sample of feather stick work. Here's a picture of that. Yeah, even in the hands of a bushcrafting idiot like me, it does some pretty good clean feather stick work. I also took some split firewood and then reduced it to small kindling by batoning this knife through it with the 150 thousandths thick spine and a pretty skinny tip and a super tiny edge. I heard some cracks and pops. It was elm that I was splitting, and the first couple times I heard it, as the convex profile of this blade was splitting those fibers apart, and elm has fibers like this all knotted up. The first couple cracks and pops I heard, I was pretty gingerly about taking the blade out and looking at it. No damage. That was just the wood splitting. And I did that after I did my edge work, okay? It just goes through it like nothing. And after my edge work, or after I did a little woodwork with the finished edge, this is what we still have. I'm so bad at this, looking through a camera. Okay, that's pretty smooth and quiet, I think you'll agree. The edge just doesn't care. I mean, it goes through wood, it just doesn't care. Like the honey badger, sort of, yeah. But here's kind of the impressive thing. And I did offer guys who wanted to have their Gunny Sidekicks drop shipped to here to finish the edge. I offered a bit of a discount than off the price I usually charge for a super steel, especially M4. And then I hoped like heck that they would come in thinly ground so I wouldn't have to reprofile them a lot, and thank goodness they did. But here's the rest of the story. This is a factory edge. I haven't sharpened this knife yet. Now you're going to notice it's probably not as quiet going through the paper. Well, you got to cut it, Rob. So, you know, it's making a little more noise. But it still push cuts. Barely. I promise it does. It's, you know, not freely, but it does. That's pretty impressive, guys, for a factory edge on a knife. You know, it's a little toothy, it's a little unrefined, it's not super consistent, but it's a grabber. Anybody who thinks Bark River knives don't come sharp, well, they do. You know, do they come this sharp? No, they don't. But you know, that takes 45 minutes of handwork to do. But can you use them right out of the box for just about anything? Yeah. They just did a superb job, guys. Superb. A little dry. The handle materials are super varied. I specified that I wanted green canvas micarta and desert ironwood burl. Of course, Mike had to have some black canvas in there. But it's a normal Bark River dispersion of handle materials. And here's the good news. These knives came out on Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern time. There was a little bit of traffic. There was a little bit of confusion with the website. Some inventory came back up after it had been sold. There were a couple guys that thought they bought knives and they had been sold to somebody else, and that happens when a website gets hammered. We originally planned an order of 150. Mike made somewhere between 180 and 200, and there are, as of the filming of this video, 52 left in a variety of handle materials. And guys, I'm telling you, if I'd have made this knife or had Bark River make this knife for me and it didn't come out right, you wouldn't even be seeing a video. They'd be sold anyway, as most of them already are, and I wouldn't be on the camera telling you that it's a wonderful knife if it wasn't. Man, they just did a great job. So if you haven't got one yet, there are still some available with still a really good selection of handle materials. One thing we need to talk about is the price, because guys have been a little shocked at how expensive they are. Actually had one of my longtime customers text me and say, man, they're expensive. You know, a Gunny Vortex with the same handle accoutrements is, you know, like $100 less. Well, you need to understand and we've sort of already talked about this, the issues you run into trying to make a blade like this out of M4 that is this hard. And by the way, you can run M4 at 62 to 63 Rockwell like these are, and it still retains amazing toughness. and it's super grind resist, or it is super resistant to tempering with heat. So even though we're grinding these without coolant and doing it very thin, which, as you know, the thinner you make the edge, the less it can sink the heat away, so the more it heats up. M4 retains amazingly high hardness at temperatures, well over 700 degrees. That's why M4 exists, to be used in high-speed rotating cutting tools without being affected in their performance as they heat up. So this is just a super material to use for lots of reasons. Super hard, super wear resistant, way tough for a given hardness, and it's unaffected by the heat generated from the finishing process. So it's just great stuff. The problem with it is it's super hard to grind. It's super hard to grind, and it's super hard to grind. Their process at Bark River has to be altered to run this steel. And then the guys who are finishing these knives, both in the hafting shop, even though the tangs are softer than the blades, M4 doesn't get very doggone soft. So to come up with perfectly hafted knives, given the fact that the spine of this handle is so hard compared to the material that surrounds it, it's just difficult. And they killed it. They just absolutely killed it. There is no other fixed blade manufacturer I would have trusted to make this knife. And my trust was well placed and earned. Just look at that beauty, would you? So a knife like this with desert ironwood burl and no other adornments, no liners, no mosaic pins, any of that. And the low to mid 300s on KnivesShipFree. This same knife, if it were made in A2, it'd be what, $240. Is it worth $100 more? To me, it is. I had to pay for this knife, believe it or not, my friends. I am happy, and I think you will be too. And guys who are watching this, who are the new owners of a Gunny Sidekick, please weigh in with your impressions in the comments. If you have a YouTube channel, please make a video. I'm interested to hear what you think. I'm very, very happy with it. And by the way, you might notice this handle is in desert ironwood burl, because this one is mine. Grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and all of these Gunny Sidekicks are sharp.